What was that? A really, really disappointing Sunday afternoon at Easter Road. Maybe it's been coming as well. We've been poor the last few games, and maybe we've got away with it at times scoring late winners, but it wasn't be today. Nothing each with Hibs. This is Tino with the Final Whistle show live. This afternoon, I'm joined by Joe and James. Joe, I'll come to you first. What's your initial thoughts on the Final Whistle?
It was disappointing. As you say, I think it had been coming. A lot of the games that we've won have been fairly tight. It's been sort of late winners, but today was poor. We just didn't look like we were ever going to score, and yeah, it was just really, really disappointing.
Yeah. James, did you ever see a goal coming, or did we get what we deserved?
I mean, the last 15 they were pushing for it. Was that the only clear chance was Jota. I just don't know if, like you said, you felt it was coming, kind of thing. And I was starting to see what happens when you play really, really intense Ange ball type football. We've got a Leeds pal, Martin Matt, that kind of said this is how it goes. Round about February, you start to tire. Not that I'm being a harbinger of doom with Bielsa end-ups and stuff like that, but there's certainly something. Last few games, there's been a lack of cohesion.
Yeah, there's no doubt. What I'm going to do, I'm going to jump to the comments earlier, lads, because there's one comment which I think is fairly accurate. Skip the part where we'll lose the league, because I think it's a bit early for that, given the good run that the team have been on. So let's not push the panic button at one poor result. But I agree here. So the comments from Mojo Rising comments a lot, and he's seems to bring some good stuff to the show. This is poor. We'll lose the league at this rate. There's something entirely missing from this team, and I've no idea what it is anymore. Morale seems low, fatigue a worry, there's just no magic. And I think those last three lines, morale, fatigue, no magic, they're fairly accurate. James, what's your take on that?
Well, if you look at who was providing the magic early on in the season, it was Jota. And for me, Jota's not come back from Benfica when he went away for a bit of rehab. I don't know if someone's got in his ear about, potentially coming back and, his home team and all that kind of stuff. But, he's a man devoid of ideas, and he's the man that always had the ideas. And whilst I wouldn't put it all in one guy, because there's, take your pick from the guys today. Yeah. There's no magic there. There's no creation. There's a real lack of invention. So it's a worry. It's nothing that can't be fixed. It can be fixed quickly, but it's got to get fixed now.
It's got to be fixed quickly. Joe, James mentioned there, the magic absolutely was brought by Jota and Kyogo, in the first half of the season. Somebody was saying on Twitter, the George Michael Kyogo all day long, headband Kyogo, Jota, not so much. The guy that's come back, and you're right, James, he's had a couple of injuries and different things, but the Jota we're seeing just now, some of those efforts over the bar, he's doing the good stuff to come inside. Some of the efforts are woeful. So, Joe, you've got that thing going on where the magic men aren't quite so magic just now, but what about the fatigue point? I thought there looked like a lack of energy across the board. Like, a few guys puffing and just not quite sharp. What did you see?
I thought the same. I thought a lot of what they were doing off the ball was a real reflection of fatigue. That they're pressing. They weren't pressing in as many numbers. They weren't pressing as aggressively as they have been, and what an Ange team usually should be pressing like. I thought, our energy going forward. I mean, you can count, especially in the first half, you can count in one hand how many times we actually hit the byline, and the amount of goals we score with the fullbacks of the wingers getting the ball down, attacking the fullback and getting the ball down the line. You're wanting your wingers to be aggressive in that way, and that obviously comes from having. If you're fatigued, you can't do that. Yeah. So it did look very lethargic in that sense, definitely.
I think a lot of the success we've had so far this season, Joe, has been getting to the byline, but instead of these floaty crosses, which I don't know what height Matt Macy is, 6'5" or something, he's just plucking it out there, no problem. The ones that we were getting results with were the likes of the low cross into Giakoumakis against Hearts that he's back heel flicked, the cross from Ralston into Kyogo against Hearts, the offside one that he's finished really sharply at the front post. These high floaty things, when you've got, I think 5'8" Maeda as your centre forward, that's not the option. And when the guy coming out the back post is maybe Abada's, Jota's, even Taylor's at times when they're getting there, we don't have that height. And particularly today, when you take Giakoumakis out the firing line or out the equation, it just leaves it very poor, James. And I just thought on the odd occasion in the first half where we did manage to get to a byline or close, we were wasteful is not the word. We were just guessing at it. We were just throwing it up there to see what happened.
Yeah, And that's it. But it's all very well to be probing and trying things, but not for 90 minutes. You can see that that's not working. Look at something else. I know the bench was light. You get 2 top draw strikers out injured, with Giakoumakis and Kyogo, but it wasn't happening for Maeda, not for a lack of effort. He wasn't getting much service. He's up against a huge big goalie and he's tiny himself. Was there an option to say, right, well, this isn't working? Either Maeda goes out in the wing and Abada goes through the middle, or Maeda comes off and does Karamoko come on, or something? Show me something, because this isn't working, and there's no point just doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Yeah, it wasn't working, and I don't want to use the term we've got away with it at times, because it seems quite dismissive, but you look at the Ross County game, for example, the late Ralston winner, 96, 97 minutes. We've huffed and puffed, and we've got the break there. We've scored the goal. That's great. We could maybe have got away with that today, but it didn't look like happening. And actually, maybe it was the last 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes. We did look to threat a wee bit more, and Jota was getting some low crosses into the box, and it looked like something might come off. But why are we waiting so late to turn the screw? There seems to be call it lethargy, call it a casualness even in our build-up play, from 50, 60, 70 minutes. There's no urgency there. There doesn't seem to be anyone, and I include Captain Callum McGregor here. There was nobody saying, I'm going to scruff of the neck this, and I'm going to, take this game forward and really drive us. It just seemed that across the board, Joe, a few players are out of ideas just now.
Yeah, I think so. I think Hibs defended. It is hard to play against teams like Hibs where they are really robust, and now we see it at Celtic Park a lot of the time where teams sort of just camp in the box, and it's difficult to just. What we're doing at the end of the game is sort of just throw balls into the box, which in a sense works, but when you've got guys like Ryan Porteous in the box who just love to get those balls into the box, because their game is just to get the ball and clear it. They don't really have. I don't rate Ryan Porteous much as a footballer, but I think defensively is quite a good player. Yeah. So I think by throwing these floaty balls into the box, well, there's not really a lot of pace in the ball, and as you say, there's not a lot of height in the team. All that's going to happen is the goalie's either going to come out and collect it, and Ryan Porteous is just going to clear it easily, and that's what happened. And it's just a bit. We did run out of ideas. That was just a true example of it.
Yeah, I think you're right to a huge extent. Guys like Ryan Porteous love that. If you tell them pre-match, this is what's going to happen, they're going to end up throwing it into the box, and all you need to do is just win your headers and clear your lines. It suits them all day long. James, I'm just having a glance here, just to clarify what I thought in terms of we only used one sub. O'Reilly comes in for Rogic, fairly like for like, although if we've got time, do we need to talk about Rogic because he has fallen way off the boil as well. O'Reilly, I thought, came in and brought a wee bit more energy, better touches and different things. But is that it? We're huffing and puffing and we only see fit to make one change. Is James Forrest done in Ange's eyes? If James Forrest isn't deemed good enough to come off the bench against Hibs, does that tell you he's done? Karamoko, young, talented, huge prospect. Has he got something? And if so, can we get him on? I like your suggestion. I agree with your suggestion about could we put Maeda was seriously ineffective. Could we take him off, put Abada central, which we've seen a couple of times to good effect, and try Dembele out wide? Why do you think Ange was so reluctant to make changes and roll the dice?
I think the Forrest one answers itself. If you've got James Forrest of 3 years ago on the bench against Hibs at Easter Road and you need a goal, you're bringing him on 60 minutes all day long. The fact that he didn't, like I say, tells its own story. Karamoko would have been the shout for me because you know what he's like when he comes on. He's pretty fearless, and you needed somebody to be a bit brave and take a chance, take some responsibility. Nobody was taking responsibility there today, and that's the pretty terrifying aspect of it all, is that no one was wanting to step up. O'Reilly was my man of the match, which tells you everything.
Yeah, hard to disagree. More so because there was just no one else in any way half decent. Before I forget to cover this point in the game, what was that down in the corner, our corner in the 90th minute, where we've got the free kick? Greg Taylor dilly-dallies about whether to take it or not, leaves it for Joe Hart, and we mess about to some tune and give away a corner. Listen, I like Ange Ball as much as the next man, maybe. But what was that? We're chasing a game and we end up giving away a corner. Joe, what do you make of that?
There's a time and a place. You don't do it in your own corner when your goalie's taking the goal kick for a start, which already leaves you, for obvious reasons, leaves you exposed. There's a threat if they do catch the break, they can shoot. But also, I mean, even when he was lining up to take the free kick, the pass to Starfelt was on about 5 minutes. I mean, a good 5 seconds before he played the pass.
Yeah.
And by the time he played the pass, the Hibs front line had sort of sussed out what they were going to do. And then it was just an absolute mess. But I think with Joe Hart, with him with the ball at his feet, I've found, up until now, I've been like, do you know what, it's Joe Hart. I know what he's doing. He clearly knows what he's doing with the ball at his feet. I'm quite comfortable with him playing with the ball because you trust him. And he's obviously a decent goalkeeper. But in the last few weeks or so, I've not at all. It's just a bit shaky.
Yeah. And you know, it wasn't the worst thing that happened today, but it was one of them, you know, and you can add that to the list. Looking at the more general picture, James, so that's the first points we've dropped in the league since December. I think it was that nothing each draw against St Mirren, 22nd of December. So obviously we've been fine, we've been picking up the points, but is it fair to say has something like this been coming at least since maybe the Motherwell game? Taking care of Rangers fine, we've dealt with Motherwell the next week, but beyond that, I've got a note here. So since that Motherwell game, with the Aberdeen game up at Pittodrie, I was up there with Paddy. We've kind of eked out a 3-2 win that day. We beat Raith Rovers in the cup, not convincing. Bodo have beat us twice, we know all about that. Dundee, another 3-2 late win last week. Has it been on the cards?
Absolutely, 100%. You can see the way the football's been trending within the team. You know, and a few injuries and a few enforced changes, all that kind of stuff. You know, this was really my overriding thoughts on, you know, going for 4 trophies. Is that fatigue's going to set in a lot quicker when you're fighting on all fronts, particularly if you come off a fairly demoralising defeat away in Norway there, because we just weren't at it in a team that was just all right, well organised. That's always the danger when you fight. But you're in the tournament, you've got to play the game and you've got to play it to win that. That's fine. But I think it's having an effect. It's also a distraction. Now we said this after the game on Thursday night. There's no distractions. Their heads weren't in the game today. So where's the benefit from no distractions?
Yeah. And you talk about fatigue, and I think we've definitely seen that today. But there's several guys that have started there today. You know, guys like Carter Vickers, Greg Taylor, Juranovic. I'm running through them here. McGregor, Hitati, Abada, Jota. These guys all didn't. You know, most of them didn't start or feature at all in Norway.
It's mental fatigue more than physical.
And that is the job of Ange. So again, I said it earlier on. I'm definitely not at a stage where we're pushing the panic button. But what's the button just below panic, James? Because I'm pushing that one. The concern button is the one I'm pushing because there's definitely things that need to be addressed just now. And this is Ange's job. This is his gig. You know, he sets up a system and a style of play, which is fine. A key role also as part of that, though, is the motivation. You know, why are guys seemingly running on empty when we're now, you know, we're only 10 games out. We've got 10 league games to go. We're currently in the driving seat, but it's pretty neat. And we'll see how Rangers fare against Motherwell today, but we can't expect any favours there. So, you know, Joe, what's the deal? Is it unfair of us to ask questions of Ange, or is it time to do so?
I think it's that time to do so because, now, again, if you to tell us at the start of the season we would be as doing as well as we have up until now. I mean, if you were to tell us we would win the first trophy up for grabs, we would still be top of the league. And, you know, up until the last maybe 6 weeks or so, we've not been playing well.
Yeah.
I would say I would have took it this time last year. However, I do think, I mean, we've got high standards, and I think it's unfair that we have high standards because we are expected to go into every game and feel we're going to win. We are expected to play in a way that's entertaining and expected to play in a way that shows that we're hard working, shows that we're intense and we're really, really difficult to play against. And when that stops, then that you do need to ask questions. And when you've not been doing it for 6 weeks, then I think we need to. It's only one man you can sort of put down to blame, and it's the manager.
And Gavin Strachan, is that what you said?
No, the manager.
Oh, I can.
Strachan always gets the win the tips are down.
Yeah, there's a comment here from Daniel Henderson, and Daniel's, I've not seen it, obviously none of us have seen it, we're on here, but in Ange's post-match comments, he said we're excellent. I'll take it as read that, you know, Daniel's accurate there and that he has said that. That's shades of Lenny, James, when you're seeing in front of your eyes, it's not excellent, it's far from excellent, and the manager's telling you otherwise. if he has said that, and listen, we'll take it into context, we'll make a point of watching this ourselves after, but if he's coming out and saying things of that nature, that's disingenuous at best.
Yeah, it's not shades of Lennon. It's a quote from Lennon's Big Book of Bad Management, and that's worrying, because I know there's a lot of mind games into management about what I say outside the dressing room, what I say inside it, and that's fine. But my fear is that he's saying the same thing inside the dressing room, and you were just unlucky it didn't come off you today. They were woeful today. To your point, Joe, I agree, like, we're in a good position compared to where we expected to be, but we've got real quality on the pitch there, and they've got to start delivering against a team they should be taking care of,
Yeah.
So I'm with you, Martin. It's not the panic button, but I'm all for panicking. I'm all for panicking early before it's too late.
Yeah, get your panicking in early. That's the best way to do it, I think. So, I mean, on that note, we've covered some of the bad stuff. We've covered what's went wrong. We've raised a question about how Ange's currently approaching it. So, what's the answer? Let's propose. What does Ange do moving forward? It's his job to find the answers. But what do you think, Joe? Some people have mentioned today just a serious lack of final product, and you can look at that in a couple of areas. Obviously, it's the job of the wide men and the forward players to get it in the box. It's also the job of the front men to finish. Now, being very kind, of course, we know that Giakoumakis didn't feature today. I believe it's an illness, so back for during the week. Maeda is not doing it, and you can forgive him for the full season in Japan, but he's a pretty poor game today. We know Kyogo's not available. I don't need to mention Albion Ayeti not available, but in terms of your front men, you are limited in terms of your options there, and maybe that's an excuse. And I don't want to find excuses for Ange, but I mean, what do you think, Joe? What can be done? How can they freshen it up, and how can we shake this off, as soon as possible?
Well, I don't really know, to be honest, because I mean, as you say, you've listed off about 4 or 5 players now. Obviously, we've got our injuries, but I mean, we can't say that he's not tried to change the team. I mean, he's made 7 changes from Wednesday, albeit it wasn't his strongest team on Thursday. Sorry, albeit it wasn't his strongest team on Thursday, but clearly none of the players that were involved on Thursday that are now out of the team it's not as if they were rested; they were dropped because they weren't good enough. So yeah. I think it's a case of, now we've got the one benefit of not being in Europe is that you do have a bit of time, and you will have a bit of a break in between midweek games, which I think they'll welcome. Obviously, would have liked to have been in Europe, but in terms of the league, I mean, surely that's going to. I mean, I think they'll put it this way: they've got no excuses for the next couple of weeks or so.
And I don't think we had an excuse for today. So the benefit of resting those 6-7 players, James, on Thursday night is so that you do have that advantage of being fairly fresh, going to Easter Road today. A place where, you and I were at Easter Road for the earlier game of the season. We've dominated that game. We've won it by half-time, and we've blown them away. What's changed so much between now and then? Has Kyogo coming out the team had such an impact?
Nah, because we rolled on well past Kyogo. We've done a lot of great things whilst Kyogo's been out injured. So I couldn't say that's had, losing a talisman type effect. For me, it really comes down to basic football. The passing today was so poor from the first minute. I've never seen Celtic pass so many times behind their man, and then the guy's got to adjust his body, bring the ball back in, which gives the defender time to get in and cover it, which takes away all your opportunity of breaking fast, surprise, the stuff that we've been enjoying for the whole season. Yeah. That if you fix that one thing, you'll certainly go a bit closer than we were today.
I noticed a lot of times, I scribbled in my notes about how poor some of the first touches were. And they're taking the poor first touch. There's a few guys in my head that I remember noting at the time: Abada, Maeda, even Carter Vickers, who's usually pretty steady. I mean, you're taking that first touch, so they're recovering from it, and they're getting it under their feet, and they're fine in the second or third touch. They've moved it on. But that's the difference. If you have a really sharp first touch, you can zip it on quickly. Can you get it up to your winger? Can you get it into your midfielder? And the whole thing starts to revolve from there. If you dilly-dally, off your first touch goes behind you, you're having to check yourself, then that just takes the flow out of the move. And even, it doesn't matter where it is in the park, whether it is as deep as Carter Vickers or as high as Jota, Abada, Maeda. If that happens, it just takes all the rhythm and the tempo. And we're not a counter-attacking side, but we're so effective in transition, when we get the ball back and, really go at a team. And we've seen that to such good effect. You look at things early in the season, what's coming to mind just now is that Ferencvaros goal, Jota to Kyogo.
Yeah.
But it was because Jota had some excellent close control. He zipped out of his feet. Kyogo's first touch has been, world class and great finish. And that's a top example. But across the board, Joe, we're just not at ourselves in terms of that sharpness.
No, we're not. We're not. And I agree with you. I thought a lot of players' first touch was really off today. I thought particularly in the first half, and I noticed that again on Thursday as well. It's balls that are going into Rogic and O'Reilly's feet where, now albeit they've got their back to goal, but a lot of instances with Rogic, 2 months ago, Rogic would have controlled that. He would have held the guy off, and a lot of times turned. But all you want to do at that point is keep the ball. But it's like really, really basic. And now I say basic stuff. Basic stuff for their standards, because that's the standards they've set themselves over the last 2 months. But at the same time, it's basic things that it's basic things you just assume would be natural to them. That it's just not mistakes you think that they would make.
Yeah. The bigger frustration is, as you say, Joe, we know they're more than capable. So it's not like there's a guy coming into the team and you're going, this fella's limited, we just need to take what we get from him. It's guys like Jota who are exceptional. It's other players throughout the team that have got more to offer, and they're just not doing it. James, is it too simple to say we just miss Ayeti far too much?
You mentioned him earlier on there. I'm going, if he was the bench, I'd have brought him on, 100%. But that's the Baldy effect, the longer somebody's away, the better you think they are.
Yeah, I'm being flippant there about Ayeti, but what about young Joey Dawson, for example, who showed that he had something? Should he have at least been in the squad? Because we didn't have a striker on the bench, did we? Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, didn't. And
no striker on the bench.
So Maeda's striker helps in the bench.
Yeah, so Maeda's your only number 9 there today, and he is off it. I think also while we're touching on Maeda and Hatate, it's obviously well known that they've played a full season in Japan, but you've seen them come in and looking lively at times. Hatate was exceptional against Rangers and Hearts and some other games. Maeda certainly shown no lack of will, and he works very hard. But do we need to be more realistic about the fact that fatigue will very naturally kick in? I don't know what the sports science guys are saying at Celtic, James, but at times Hatate, particularly in the last 10-15 minutes, the ball was just rolling under his foot. He was dead on his feet. Why not change that?
Change it in terms of it shouldn't be starting games at this point. We've got midfield options there, and I know Turnbull's kind of on the road back and stuff like that, so there might be further options coming along. But yeah, I think it's starting to look like a factor. When they've come in, they've got the atmosphere of a new club and the enthusiasm that naturally a player will get coming into that situation. I think that's spent now, and you've got this potential too much football fatigue coming in. Certainly Hatate, he was just, if you compare him to, what was his debut? I can't remember. It was maybe against
Hibs.
Hibs at home. Yeah.
Right. And he came on and you were just thinking, this guy's an absolute player. It was like a totally different guy today, So that's got to be addressed. And between him and Rogic being your creative engine in the midfield, Hibs had them covered all day long. And you had to be thinking, well, we need to change that. Change up the midfield 3, whether Callum goes forward or whatever it is, but change that. And Rogic should have been off for O'Reilly, long before. And for me, O'Reilly starts now.
I think you're right, but we're getting to this point where, for a time, you knew you're starting 11, give or take, because it was just a real consistency and a real bit of form there and a bit of bounce. Now we're getting into 1 week O'Reilly, 1 week Hatate, 1 week Beaton, that we've seen recently. Lots of different things in the forward 6 positions. The back 4 are generally taking care of themselves, more or less. We can discuss Taylor and Ralston and all that stuff. But moving forward, because we can't find form, we're having to pluck him out and try that. And it's that lack of consistency might come back to bite us as well. Joe, do you think the players themselves, they look a wee bit body language-wise? That listen, we're so used to Celtic winning in recent years, up until last season. There was a real winning mentality across the team, and there was so many individuals within the dressing room from Bruni down that all knew what it took to win leagues and win trophies. A lot of these guys haven't been over the line. There's winners in there, and obviously we've won the League Cup, and there's McGregor, and there's Rogic, and to a lesser extent Beaton in terms of how much he's been involved. But do you think maybe they're feeling the pressure of, every point's a prisoner and having to win every game?
It would make sense, but see, I I never understand the body language thing, because I think at the end of the day it's your job. I don't think I sometimes get the impression for people whenever they say, "Oh, he doesn't look interested and he's not trying," but I think they are. I think there must be pressure. Body language wise, I think that it's hard to gauge, because I think it could just come down to tiredness, and it could really, I mean, in terms of because Ange's philosophy is so built on how quickly we play, how aggressively we press, what we do off the ball, that in that sense, yeah, I do understand, but I don't know. I don't know.
James, I mean, what do you think? Do you think it looks like the players aren't enjoying themselves as much? They were playing with a certain freedom, a certain flair. They were pretty relaxed in the first part of the season and showing some great stuff domestically. Some brilliant performances, some great football, some big wins. And as I mentioned, we've not seen much of that since at least the Motherwell game. Do you feel that they're not enjoying themselves as much?
I mean, I think that's evident. They're not playing with the same level of smiles on their faces, and we can overanalyse this, of course. But I think there's an element of that. The pressure of playing for Celtic and feeling that you need to win every game. I'm with you, Joe, and that's in your contract. You know that anyway. The difference is having to win every game when every point dropped is so impactful. In terms of this league race, and they know what it means to the fans. So there's maybe a bit of that. We've seen Rangers collapse after winter breaks, 2 or 3 seasons in a row under Gerrard, and it was the same guys that were collapsing that were winning before the break. So we can't fall into that same trap. It's just a question of what Ange decides to do about it. And the beauty of it is you've got another game coming on Wednesday night to sort it out.
Yeah, and it's a good game to have. We're at home to St Mirren. And I think you're right, James. The word collapse is a heavy word to use. I don't think we're there yet, but I think if we don't address issues, we could get to that point. The funny thing is we've turned a 6-point deficit before today into a 3-point advantage in our favour, and we'll see how today's results play out. And it's a very different thing when you're playing catch-up. When you're second, in a bizarre way, there's almost less pressure on you, because the team at the top, it's all on them. Celtic have handled that pressure of being second very well. They've got themselves into the driving seat, since that Rangers game back at the start of the month. Now the shoes on the other foot, and it's a very different proposition. And so far, they've not handled it particularly well, albeit today is the first drop point. So again, people might watch this and think we're getting over the top and being dramatic and hysterical. We're not there yet, but it's important as you see these patterns emerging to at least discuss them at this stage. Joe, James mentioned St Mirren at home on Wednesday. What's your hopes and expectations there? As I say, it is a good game to get. How does Ange approach it? What does he do?
Well, obviously, depending on who's fit, but I mean, I don't really see what changes could be made that would make a real difference. I mean, on the basis purely today, because they only made one sub, so he clearly thought that there was nobody in the bench there that he thought were really going to make a difference. So, I think he'll play a very similar team. Maybe Ralston would get a chance this time round, because you know what he's like. He does like to rotate the fullbacks, and I don't think he's done a great deal wrong. And I think Juranovic obviously is a very good player, but in terms of changes, I think he would be the only one, because I don't really see how else he can change it. But it's a big game and we need to win. So it's
absolutely. One potential, James, maybe too soon for Wednesday, but Kieran here has said, well, we're always liable to drop points based on form, and hard to disagree with that. The Turnbull return can't come fast enough. Now, I know you're not the biggest fan of Turnbull, but just in terms of giving us something more than the thing, if you had Turnbull there today, James, it'd be a better alternative to Hatate, who's out on his feet. So with guys like Turnbull hopefully coming back soon, that should help. Giakoumakis would likely be in the squad. So, is there an option to start freshening it up, because the current 11, 12, 13 that he's relying on aren't quite at themselves?
Yeah, I think we need to freshen up the mid three for sure. Whatever options that may be, we need to find that. I don't think it's going to be Turnbull for a couple of things too soon from.
Yeah,
I genuinely don't think he fits very well in a fast-flowing 4-3-3. I think he really suits a 4-5-1 and things like that. So I think there's got to be some adjustment in Turnbull's game to come into play Ange's 4-3-3. And I think he's a really intelligent footballer, and he can certainly adjust to that. I just think Wednesday night's going to be too soon for him to make those changes within his own game.
Yeah, I do. I don't think Turnbull's going to feature on Wednesday, far from it. I think he's still maybe a week or two out, maybe even longer. But just in terms of looking at potential options and how Ange can freshen up. I'm really disappointed. You know, one of the,
you're a good team, McGregor, O'Reilly. That's an easy 3. Put you need a good team of 6. Let the other 2 do the creating.
Yeah. We're starting to wrap things up, Joe, but you see the comment on screen from Robert. Why the lack of subs? The game was crying out for it. We did have guys on the bench who certainly historically you would look to. You know, James Forrest was there. We've spoken about Dembele's possible creativity, and it was quite puzzling. And there's no doubt he has to freshen things up. So, you know, it's one thing, you can't keep going back to the well if it's not working. You can see at the moment it is flat, and I just think some changes are required ahead of Wednesday.
Yeah, I think so. I do think the changes need to be required. And again, it wasn't on paper, it's not the worst bench. And, you know, you have got James Forrest. Karamoko Dembele needs to feature at some point. And you think that the fact he's on the bench, he's not there to, you know, fill a seat. He's obviously there because he values him. Because, I mean, that boy, Ben Doak, is the player. I think he's playing the B team today. But he clearly trusted him to bring him on. And he's only 16. Age isn't really shouldn't be an issue, and I don't think for him is an issue. For Ange, I mean, it isn't an issue. But yeah, I think with Turnbull, I think he's played so. I mean, he played so many games because we really didn't have anyone else.
Yeah,
and I think in that sense it will help because he's had that experience of I can't I can't be dropped because there's nobody else, but B, he's got that in his system where he's going into games regardless of whether it's 3 days after a European tie or he's had a week off. You need to go in and you need to win. And I think that's really important. But obviously Hatate, unlike any footballer in the world, is really ever in that position. So it's hard to, you know, bring that into someone and expect them to win every week. And regardless of how well they've played, I think with Turnbull coming back, that would be definitely a big boost, like mentality-wise, but also ability-wise.
Yeah, I also think just, you know, in general terms, having options on the bench, you know, it allows you to change it, and even just sometimes change for change's sake can just, you know, affect something within the game because it clearly wasn't happening today. And sometimes when you make a change, it gets the other guys to say, right, okay, we're going for this or something's happening. And that just wasn't the case today, James. There's other guys on the bench that we could talk about. You know, there's Gucci who's come in and not featured much, and James McCarthy was there. You know, if you think he may have something to offer. I noticed that Julian wasn't in the bench, and you just wonder, these guys have got to play at some point. You're right, Joe. You know, if you think Dembele's good enough for the bench, you think somewhere he should be coming on. And we could labour, and I'm, you know, starting to kind of haver a bit, and it's maybe just, you know, the results getting to me. James, any final comments before we wrap this one up?
Go for a lie down. I'll check the teletext results later on. Hopefully things are looking good. My bets are up.
Take a wee lie down, refresh it at 3:45 and see what's come up, and then again at 4:45. Yeah. Joe, anything from yourself generally on today or looking forward?
Disappointing. Hopefully we'll go on to Wednesday. It's Hibs we've got a really bad record at Easter Road. So I mean, it's one of the games you would rather drop points there than at home to, you know, with all due respect for St Mirren, who we usually, but I mean, we beat St Mirren 7-0 at the start of the season, so you're obviously going into that game with confidence, and we very rarely lose or drop points to St Mirren at home. I would have taken drop points against Hibs because now we don't need to play that. We don't need to play Hibs away for the rest of the season.
Yeah,
so that's one positive.
You've got too much faith in Ange ball, Joe. It was 6-0 at the start of the season. You've added on
an extra goal. Was it 6-0?
Yeah. Anyway, but all in all, tough afternoon at Easter Road. So drop points, as mentioned, for the first time in December. Next up, we've got St Mirren at home on Wednesday night. We'll be back with you for that one, and we'll also be back with our weekly show on Tuesday of this week. But in the meantime, my thanks to Joe and James for joining us today, and also thanks to everyone who's joined us in the live, particularly those who have made comments. If you are here just now, please make a point of liking and subscribing to the show. But in the meantime, and as always, thanks for tuning in.